Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Kirk Cousins cuts open a vein yesterday at his presser, and the biggest what-ifs from the Vikings draft.
I'm Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings, and I skip voluntary workouts every day.
I'm Arif Hasan with Pro Football Network. I'm really excited for Sam to tell me what's happened in the Vikings world. Why would I pay attention to that?
I will tell you, Arif, coming up on today's Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Happy Thursday. It's the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'm Sam Ekstrom covering the Vikings here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Arif Hasan, Pro Football Network. Find him on Twitter at Arif Hasan NFL. And Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings host, Locked On Vikings postcast as well. He's at Luke Braun NFL. Plenty to get to today. We are still putting a bow on the Minnesota Vikings draft. I want to dive into some what-ifs that Vikings fans might have from that draft. We got injury updates yesterday from Brian O'Neill, Akayleb Evans, and Andrew Booth Jr. We'll get into their comments as well as Kirk Cousins' comments as he discussed his non-contract or lack thereof in yesterday's press conference. But we begin the show with an early appearance from Ron Johnson, right after I remind folks that we are brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more at FanDuel.com/Locked On. Get started today. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. Find us free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Ron Johnson makes an early appearance on today's Minnesota Football Party. Ron, good morning.
Morning. How's it going, fellas?
Yeah. Hey, good. Let me jump in with this. OTAs are coming up, and Jordan Addison doesn't know the offense yet, right? He's just been probably given the playbook. He's been tossed into this. Meanwhile, everyone else around him basically knows the framework, right? Like all the other starters kind of understand what they're doing. So as a receiver, how does Jordan Addison get integrated? How does he be a part of this while he's so far behind schematically?
Well, I mean, rookie minicamp, they're gonna pour it into him because like there are certain parts of the offense, and honestly, going through OTAs, minicamp, you don't divulge your entire offense anyway because you don't know who's going to get cut, who you might trade. So you kind of put together bits and pieces. You don't throw you don't baptize them into the fire. You kind of spoon feed them like a baby, and that's what it is for a rookie. You're starting off as an infant, and just like any parent, you spoon feed them. So they're going to start off really basic run stuff, really basic pass stuff. You're not going to see a ton of checks. You're not going to see a ton of motions and shifts. They're not going to get to that. So honestly, as a receiver, if Justin's going to be the X and he's going to be the Z, and then they're going to put, depending on who goes in the slot, I think he's going to start off as wide receiver 3 anyway. Like KJ Osborne is going to come out as wide receiver 2 to start it off, just like Justin Jefferson is a first-round pick who was behind Adam Thielen and BC Johnson. So it's going to be the same type of formula, even though there's a different coaching staff. It's the same formula in the NFL. And I think if you have a wide receiver 2 that can get you through early parts of training camp and games, you do it. And I know KJ Osborne can do that. And then you work Jordan Addison in. Now, if he earns a spot as wide receiver 2, then he's going to have to earn it. But he's not going to be given the keys to the castle. And so I don't think it's going to be an issue trying to work up to it. In routes, there's only 9 routes you can run. And or 10 if you want to call 0 a route. But you got 10 routes you can run. Now, there's bits and pieces within those routes, but there's only 10 routes. And so other than that, it's just learning where those routes fit in the concept. If there's a dig on the backside, there's a big post on the front side. That stuff is football 101. So I don't think he'll have a problem. I just know they're going to spoon feed him early.
Yeah, and one more on that. Kirk Cousins and his offensive teammates have all been very confident that having an extra year in the system is going to make everything a little smoother. Do you think it's that simple? Or do you think that it also requires Kevin O'Connell to sort of understand his own scheme better and how he wants to sequence plays and draw things up?
Yeah, well, for Kirk saying that, you have to think about how many offense coordinators he has had to go through and learn in the system, and for the Vikings offense period, going back to Mike Zimmer, of how many different offensive coordinators were in this program. And so I think for Kirk, his thought is, well, this is year 2. We're not building. We're not creating. We're just going over it again and getting back into the flow of it. So I think the verbiage, the play scheming, as far as how you're going to get to the plays you want to get to, meaning how you set them up, whether you pass to run or run to pass, that's going to be up to Kevin O'Connell week 1. Right now, it's just going to be literally go out there. Okay, if they call it 101, which is hitch, and then the middle guy has either hook or some type of shallow hookup, middle of the field type route for the tight end. That's all they're going to do. They're going to run hitches. They're going to run slants. They're going to run quick outs. Like, they're going to keep it very basic early on. They're going to run curls. They're going to run deep outs. They're going to run deep comebacks. I mean, it's not going to be super, super intricate early on, especially for the rookies. But for Kirk, yeah, he's saying, you know what, we don't have to watch 50 million DVDs of the Rams offense anymore. We now have our offense. We can go back and watch our tape. We can watch our cut-ups. And so I think that's what Kirk's getting at. Is last year, they were watching a ton of Rams film. Like, that's all Kevin O'Connell had. The Vikings didn't have an identity, so he was building it. Now in year 2, yeah, they have an identity. They know what they were last year, and now it's just figuring out what they're going to be.
Braun?
I want to talk a little bit about the Gophers. A bunch of Gophers got drafted. A bunch of Gophers ended up signing undrafted free agent deals, get minicamp invites and stuff. What's your favorite landing spot for a former Gopher?
I like the Saints for Jordan Howden. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you look at the Saints defense and what they've been and what that organization is gonna be about now. I like that. I mean, they have a quarterback as well, in Derek Carr. So that team is built like to make a run. And I think Jordan Howden playing safety, coming from this Minnesota scheme, you look at Antoine Winfield Jr., you look at Tyler Nubin, you look at the DB, Benjamin St. Juste. The DBs of past and present look very bright for the Golden Gophers. And so I think that the Saints, for me, that's a really, I mean, John Michael Schmidt was an easy one. That's an easy one to say, the Giants, because of, how that offense is built. But I think the secret one is Jordan Howden. Jordan Howden, the Saints is going to be a nice sneaky pick for him, and he's a smart kid that's willing to play special teams, so I'm looking forward to it.
One of the things, I mean, Sam just mentioned like rookie minicamp for Jordan Addison, but one of the things that always kind of fascinates me is that, at least traditionally under the Spielman era, the Vikings always seem to find someone that they wanted to sign out of rookie minicamp. They usually cut a UDFA to bring that guy in, and that guy has better odds than most UDFAs to make the roster, right? He already went through one cut. Statistically, that guy has better odds than most UDFAs. But, all of us have watched, rookie minicamp all the way from, the sideline, and it does not look like easy to evaluate football. It does not look like we're getting a lot of information about these guys. So how do teams get the information they need from rookie minicamp when the practices are so sparse and the competition they're up against is so light compared to what they'll see in training camp?
Yeah, honestly, it's tough. I mean, you have to, like, that's why scouts are hired. Each scout has a job. Each scout has a role. Some guys are better than others. But it's watching body movement. It's watching footwork. It's going, and it's really film. Like, you're not going to see, I mean, on the field, you get a feel for who that person is face to face, seeing them up close. Because you see the jokes about the receiver from Tennessee. When the Dallas Cowboys coach saw him, he's like, man, look at your body. Like I thought you was going to be better than this. He was expecting DK Metcalf, and he got Eddie Murphy. I don't know what he was, like it just, or he got Drake. Like he got, he was like, I was expecting DK Metcalf, and I got Drake the rapper. Like, and the receiver was like, man, but I still can run routes and I'm fast. But you have to like take out your mindset of what you think a receiver should look like during training camp or what a linebacker should look like. Receivers and DBs are kind of easy to evaluate with pads off. Running backs and linemen are going to be the toughest, and that's why those guys are usually training camp guys, and you want to see them with the pads on, because some guys are they call them t-shirt warriors, and then when they put their pads on, they fall apart. And so I think that's the biggest thing is when you're watching the guys, the film, you can see how he moves. Does he recognize coverage? Is he running the right route? Because the coaches are going to say, hey, here's the play, what it should look like. Here's what he did wrong, and they're pointing out the misassignments. Because now when I was playing, when I was coaching, we had X's and O's. I don't know what they use now within that tablet, but I know you can make notes. So every play you can type in a note for the next coach is watching and say, oh, watch so-and-so what he does here. Like, this is not right. Or watch so-and-so, he does this really well. So all that combined, which is why coaches are staying at 9, 10 p.m., is how they do it. There's no real right answer. There's no rhyme or reason. There's some guys that get cut by teams and then go to other teams and ball out. So I don't think there's an exact science to it. It's honestly like that's why it's one of the toughest things to do. Basketball, that's easy to evaluate. You can watch a guy put the ball in the basket. Football, baseball, same thing. You can watch a guy hit home runs and throw guys out and how their footwork works on the ground ball. Football, without actually getting hit and being in the situation, you'll never really know. And so that's why it is one of the toughest sports to evaluate.
Ron, do you have any good welcome to the NFL moments from your rookie minicamp OTAs?
Well, I mean, I was a part of the 32 rookies that got flown out to California. So myself, Julius Peppers, Roy Williams, Mike Williams, TJ Duckett, Joey Harrington, David Carr. All 32 of us were flown out. We're Antoine Randall. So we were flown out to LA to hang out with each other for, 3 or 4 days. They had video cameras and everything following us. And we had played, we did the Madden Challenge. And at the Madden Challenge, the rookies, we were there, but they had, I don't even remember who it was, but it was like, I think it was like Rosalind Sanchez and Mario Lopez or something, but they were like the hosts. So I would say that was one cool moment, kind of, and Deshaun Foster, because Deshaun Foster, Sam, we had him on the show. He talked about that, he didn't realize the camera they gave him was a live camera that was going to actually be on the show, because he might have quite possibly been the worst cameraman we've ever seen. Like halfway through the interview, he's dropping the camera. He's like walking and like having it swinging, not realizing it was like a live camera and I think they thought it was funny. So they put it in the show and they actually put the notes on it's on VHS now. So unfortunately I got to figure out how to put it on digital or DVD, but it's on VHS. And so in the edit that came on ESPN, they literally, I think, put like, he has no idea he's a cameraman right now. Like, cause he was walking down the field and he's supposed to be shooting himself walking down, shooting the Rose Bowl field. And he's like just swinging the camera in his hand, like a purse. And we're like, we went back and watched it. We're like, dude, what were you doing? He's like, I don't know. They just told me to hold the camera and talk about my run against USC in the Rose Bowl. But that was cool to see all that and meet all those guys. As far as being on the team with the Ravens, I think one of my fondest moments, and Javen Hunter was a part of that. He talked about that, was just watching us all bond in the hotel, having Ray Lewis, stop by our room to kind of let Javen know, like, you got one more time or you're getting hazed, which he ended up getting hazed because he didn't listen. And then I'd say my first game, I caught a touchdown, I think against the Jets. And so that was cool, kind of like coming out the gate to catch a touchdown in my first preseason game was kind of like, okay, this is, I should be here. And so like all of that together was kind of my, hey, rookie, you're in the NFL moment all together. Cause it was like going from meeting all the rookies, going to mini camp and meeting Ray Lewis and being, watching that defense work and then getting to our first game and just seeing how it all comes together. I think it was a cool moment overall.
Yeah, and speaking of rookie receivers, we had Thayer Thomas, the UDFA, on your show yesterday. Great interview with him. Seems like a good dude. What was your biggest takeaway from that sit down with him?
I truly believe I like how he said the culture of Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings, why he picked the Vikings. He said he wanted to go somewhere where somebody wanted him, because he said a lot of teams were like, oh, we can bring you as a punt returner. Oh, we can bring you as a punt returner, because he has a good punt returner. When you watch the film, he's very solid. He's 6 feet, so he's not a small guy, so he can break tackles, decent speed, but he's a smart player. And so a lot of people were just kept saying punt return. We'll bring you as a punt returner and give you a shot. And he said, Kevin O'Connell, when they met with him, like, hey, we see a spot for you in this offense possibly. And if you think about Jordan Addison, KJ Osborne, Justin Jefferson, those three are locked. After that, this is going to be fun, because you're going to have Malik Knowles. You're going to have Thayer Thomas. You're going to have Jalen Naylor. Like, they're all going to Jalen Reagor, which, who knows where he's going to be with his salary if they decide to keep him or not. But it's going to be a fight for wide receiver 4. And I think that's what we all want to see at training camp. We don't want to go into it with everybody that's playing. We know these 5 receivers are making the team, which is fun to do, but it's always fun to have a battle. And so we'll get to see, like quarter 2 of the preseason games, and then quarter 3 and 4 of the last preseason game where Thayer Thomas and Malik Knowles and all those guys are playing with Jaron Hall. Like that's going to be, kind of the thing. Like, hey, what do they have? And if not this year, maybe he goes on practice squad, but then the next year he gets a shot. I could see him being like not Cooper Kupp as far as usage, because we know that's Justin Jefferson, but Cooper Kupp as far as how he runs routes. Like he said, I always have a way to get open. And I like that. Like a guy that says it, like I can find a way to get open. That doesn't mean I'm fast. That doesn't mean I'm the best at it. That just means I'm smart enough to understand what coverage you're running, where your leverage is at, and I'm going to use it against you to get open. And so I like how he says that, because that's a guy you can easily put in the slot. Because if you think about Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, running a route with KJ Osborne, if you go 4 wides, who's going to get forgotten? Probably one of the guys who makes wide receiver 4. And if Thayer Thomas is a guy that's consistent, can catch the ball, I like his chances, but he's going to have a fight. He's going to have a fight because Jalen Naylor has a leg up on him. And then, him and Malik Knowles are coming in as guys that have to earn the right to be on the team or be on the practice squad. He also talked about his relationships with Garrett Bradbury and how Bradbury was a leader and a captain at NC State. And then he talked about, just having that relationship and even talking to him. I like the fact that he said, Garrett Bradbury said, the culture here is great. And, because not to throw salt on the wounds, I don't know if Garrett Bradbury would have said that if this was a couple years ago. Now to say like, man, it's a great culture. You're just somewhere you want to be. And he said he had already made his mind up when he knew like in day 3, he might not get drafted. Him and his agent started looking at landing spots, and the Vikings were one of them. So, I think it's fun, and we're going to get to see him, live and in living color.
Yeah, it's a great interview. Check that out on the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. You had Terrell Smith, the Bears draft pick, on last week. You got Tyler Nubin coming up next week. Great guests. The Ron Johnson Show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, roundtable on Friday, and he appears with us on Thursdays on the Minnesota Football Party at 3Ron Johnson on Twitter. Thanks, Ron.
No, appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to be a loaded like May, June, because Merrill Hodge just confirmed he's going to come on. I told him we're going to get him on end of May, kind of June-ish. So Merrill Hodge, Steelers, all-time running back, but some great takes on the draft. And I already kind of gave him a heads up of what I'm looking for. So I'm letting him get his tickle of ivories, get his takes together, just in case Freezing Cold Takes comes back and tries to, show a clip of him doing it again. Hopefully it's on our show.
Hopefully we'll make sure that we capture it. Thanks a lot, Ron. We appreciate your time.
All right. Appreciate it.
Before we get into Kirk Cousins' comments yesterday about his contract status, I'll tell you that we are brought to you by Built Bar, a delicious snack without the sugar and calories. It's the best tasting protein bar ever. You got to try these Built Bars that are healthy and still taste amazing with 100% real dark chocolate flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. I don't know how they've nailed it with these amazing macros, but they have. 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein to fuel you. Head to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Go to the pharmacy section. Pick up the 4-bar box or the 13-bar box on these specialty flavors. Also available at Built.com, where you can order online. Go head to the store. Get yourself a box of Built Bars today. You can thank me later. Kirk Cousins, guys, yesterday was very honest at the Vikings facility. He talked about his contract status, and he went all the way back to high school. He said that this is my story. The Holland Sentinel in high school, they doubted me. At Michigan State, the student newspaper, they doubted me. Washington football team, they doubted me. They wouldn't give me a new contract 3 years in a row, and now he's back in the same situation. Arif Hasan, your expectations for Kirk with this contract hanging over his head, do you think, as he says, that it will be sort of a fuel or a catalyst for him?
I think so. Most of the time when you see an NFL player saying, they doubted me in high school, they doubted me in college, they're doubting me again in the NFL by not giving me an extension. Most of the time, I wouldn't say they're necessarily fabricating it, but because they might actually believe it. But most of the time, it's difficult for us to believe it. But here he's right. Like he was doubted in high school. That absolutely was true. He was doubted. He didn't get very many Division I offers. In fact, he barely got that Michigan State offer. And it was just like an errant like quarterback coach, and they were going to retract it. But he ended up getting that offer in part, I think, because like Nick Foles transferred. I forget the full story. But they doubted him at Michigan State. He ended up winning the job. They definitely doubted him in Washington. That's really well documented, right? I don't know if most of the Vikings tenure, the Vikings have doubted him, but our understanding of the extension that Cousins' team offered to the Vikings was fairly reasonable from like a quarterback standpoint, right? And the Vikings chose not to do it. And I think it's fair to say that most of us expect them to move on from Kirk Cousins, next year. So fair enough, right? Whether or not that's going to be a fuel for him, I don't know, because like I just mentioned, this is the normal state for Kirk Cousins. So it's not as if this is going to be extra motivation,
right? It's not
most
different
of the
enough.
time.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, right. And so it's not extra motivation because he's always had this in his pocket, right? Like it, and athletes are very good at this, right? Like Aaron Rodgers has held on to the fact that he was drafted 24th or 25th or whatever it was forever. Tom Brady has held on to the fact that like 6 quarterbacks went ahead of him or whatever forever, right? They're very good at holding on to this and using it. And Cousins has the benefit of it like kind of consistently happening to him. And so it gives him that ability, I think, to like really dig into that. Based off of like what he said in his presser, I mean, at least publicly, he's got a fairly good attitude about it. Who knows what he thinks like privately? But when he says like, most of the guys in the locker room don't have like long-term security. Like
I'm one of the guys.
Yeah, I'm one of the me. I'm one of you.
Right? $155 million. I'm one of the guys.
Yeah. We all have job security concerns, right? so he's like, he's approaching it probably the right way, in that in the NFL, nothing is guaranteed, et cetera, and so on. So is it extra motivation? Not more than usual. Is it genuine? Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a very realistic possibility that the Vikings are put in a bind here, and that's what Kirk Cousins does best. He puts his employers in a bind. Not quite elite enough to make it an easy decision, and certainly not bad enough to make it an easy decision. He's right there, like just beyond the middle, on the good side, bordering on great. And I could very well see an improvement in Cousins statistically, a reduction in wins for the team, and the defense being the easy scapegoat once again, Luke Braun.
For sure. I think what's interesting about this is the way that he is talking about it and saying, well, I kind of have to earn my place again, which is the line he always defaults to when it's time to, to talk contract is, well, I got to earn it. And I understand that. And it's very reasonable. But what I find interesting about that is it doesn't sound like a guy who expects there to be a contract extension like soon, like before he plays again.
Right.
Like it sounds like he's expecting.
Yep.
Yeah. Like he's expecting the season to really be the decision. There's been a lot of speculation about the Vikings giving Kirk an extra year or giving Kirk an extra extension before the season begins, but it feels like Kirk himself does not expect that. I still have no idea what's going to happen, but that's what's been most interesting to me about that. But otherwise, yeah, he's just kind of saying the line he always says when it's time to be asked, hey, are you worried that you're not signed to a deal? And he just kind of has to go back to the same thing he got asked all the way back to Washington when that was happening.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Kirk Cousins, and we talked about this with Ron. I do think that there's value in second year in the system. Although I wouldn't say that like in the Kubiak scheme. Granted, the play callers were different, but big picture schematically, it was pretty similar. I don't know if there was a massive step up for him in year 2 of that. And again, it is hard because he hasn't had that similar play caller year in, year out. There's a lot of continuity on the offensive side of the ball. There really is. I think if the offensive line takes a step forward, with basically everybody back, I think that could help him. I think that if Jordan Addison comes out, and I think it's realistic that he could be more effective than Adam Thielen as well. And I posed this question to Reggie Wilson and Luke Inman. Knowing now what we know, Jordan Addison is a Viking, and Adam Thielen cost, what, $8 million to per year at Carolina. Would you rather have had Adam Thielen for like a 1-year deal at 8 or Jordan Addison's rookie contract? Which would you have taken, Arif?
I mean, straight up, it's not really much of a question for me. I would take Jordan Addison, but the issue is that the cost is a first-round pick. It's not really the cost of the rookie contract. So if I would rather have Adam Thielen and the next best potential player that they could have picked in the first round pick versus Jordan and versus the status quo, I might take that one. And, I'm happy to eat my words. Jordan Addison turns out to be as good as, people say that he's going to be. Fine. Great. But what if Deonte Banks turns out to be as good? He went the very next pick, and I've been talking about, for months, right? If he turns out to be as good as I project him to be, I think for the Giants, right? Then that becomes a pretty interesting question. Maybe they should have taken him, and then they avoid the Mekhi Blackmon pick in the third round, and maybe take a receiver there. I forget who is available, but that's an interesting conversation, right? So in that world, if they get Adam Thielen for $8 million, grab a cornerback in the first round, and a different receiver in the third round, maybe I prefer that, right? But I'm super happy to eat my words when it comes to Jordan Addison if that happens.
And I will say too that taking receiver with that 102nd pick maybe wasn't a super easy decision, and that's probably why they did it early, because the three receivers taken most directly after the Blackmon pick were Darius Davis, Charlie Jones, and Tyler Scott, none of whom were particularly ballyhooed going into this draft.
I like Tyler Scott.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But also, they might have taken a receiver at the 87th pick or whatever they had.
And let's see, who could they have had there?
I think if you want to do the most exciting name that got taken, I would say Marvin Mims is probably the guy. I was doing the same thing before.
Dude, Deonte Banks, Marvin Mims combination would be an all hype team. Again, no idea if they'll be any good, but man, would it be easy to top those two up.
Where did Mims go? I'm not seeing his name here.
Back of the second round or something like that.
Okay, back of the second. So they would have, 63rd pick. So Braun, 1 year of Thielen plus Banks, or Addison, and you save the Thielen money. Which alternative or which option would you take?
So for me, it would have been Porter, but that's neither here nor there because it's the same deal of who knows.
We'll talk about that in draft what ifs coming up on the Minnesota Football Party.
Yeah, right. It's super easy to do this, and especially as these players turn out and we find out more about who's good and who isn't, it's super easy to do this and imagine they took all the good players, but they could just as easily, if Jordan Addison turns out to be good, they could just as easily go and, take some corner that and say, look, we got a corner. And then that corner turns out to be bad. And we wish we would have gotten Addison. Right. So I think I'm going to go with the Addison side of it, just because it's really, it's really easy for me to daydream and say, man, they could have got Joey Porter and then they could have got this guy. And then that would have been super awesome. And it kind of has just as good of a chance to not work out. But I guess just as good of a chance to not work out. Plus Thielen is better. So maybe I'll go with that.
See?
It sounds like your biggest draft what if, Luke Braun, is not taking Joey Porter. Would that be your number one, or do you have others as we kick off our Vikings draft what if segment?
I'm trying to think of what else. No, it's what if they caved and did the gigantic, probably unreasonable trade up for Anthony Richardson up to 3. Things were in the works. What if they actually pulled it off? That's the big what if.
3 first-round picks, including obviously this year's 2 second-round picks. Is that enough?
Maybe.
I don't even know if those
probably would have been around
math
that.
Works out. Yeah, it'd be
close. But certainly
that would have been close. And Kevin O'Connell's firstborn and his home.
Right. Which obviously that you'd have to keep that in, and that'd be worth it.
Yeah.
That would be exciting. I don't really I don't know if it's a good idea, but I would very much enjoy covering the team in that scenario.
Yeah. It's just something to file away 4 years from now, look back at the first and second round picks and go, would I trade these 6 players for Anthony Richardson?
Of note though, is that we just had this conversation a couple years ago about Justin Fields, right? The Vikings were that Courtney Cronin reported the Vikings were about to trade up for Justin Fields, and they just weren't going to budge on the back end portion of that equation. And if Fields turns maybe if Fields turns out, this year it's going to be kind of make or break in that question. That's going to be a very interesting question to have to resolve. But man, we just
eases that one a little bit. It's like, all right, at least we got like a really good player.
Right. Yeah.
It could be one thing if,
Yeah.
when you're going, God, they could have had Lamar Jackson. They picked Mike Hughes. He's not even on the team by the end of his rookie deal. Like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But it certainly is a salve for that pick to be Christian Darrisaw. And then I guess you would say like Lewis Seen and I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, like, by the time you're picking Lewis Seen, you're probably at that point because you don't have Darrisaw picking an offensive lineman. So there's like, all of these,
right,
downstream
which makes it hard to do.
Yeah. But, we'll just imagine that they pick the next best guy. Who cares?
Yeah.
Feels like the Vikings will certainly be linked to Deonte Banks because of the adjacency of the Addison and Banks picks. Probably Joey Porter Jr. because it was a major position of need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if the Vikings will be ruining not taking Mozzie Smith too much or, Anton Harrison or even the defensive lineman Murphy and Brezzy, who I liked both of them or Nolan Smith as well. But I think that the Vikings will probably have that, regret if Deonte Banks turns out to be a star, if Joey Porter Jr. turns out to be a star. Certainly the trade up. Go ahead.
On the Joey Porter front, it just feels like if he turns out to be a star, that's the one that I think people will latch on to more than if Deonte Banks turns out to be a star. And part of that's because, like, shouldn't it be obvious that someone named Joey Porter would turn out to be good at football? Like, it just like feels like, clearly that should have been the pick, right? Like,
Antoine Winfield seemed obvious too.
Right.
League, I think the league had to collude to make sure that Joey Porter Jr. would be a Steeler. I think that's just a solid that everybody did for Pittsburgh. And I think that's wholesome.
I don't know. The league doesn't do solids. Did you hear the report this morning that Bill Belichick traded at cost to the Steelers specifically to screw the Jets? The league doesn't do solids.
Wait, what? Yes.
The pettiness.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. It's wonderful. The Vikings will trade in division. Everyone agrees on a fair price. The Patriots, absolutely not. Anything in division comes at an extra cost, including myself.
What about regretting? I think Ringo is going to be another guy that gets compared quite a bit to Blackman because that's position for position.
There's like four corners in that went right at the top of day 3, and whichever one of them works out is going to be the one that gets compared.
Yeah, I will 100% pick and choose my my regret matrix here.
Right, we're going to cherry pick for sure.
Yeah,
basically anyone in the 4th round, right? Like if anyone in the 4th round has moderate success, I think the Northwestern edge rusher
edge/tackle
Adetomiwa Adebaware, I think that he's going to be really good. Colts just killed the draft.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Colts did kill the draft.
Did I nail it? I don't think
Colts and Sam
100% you did not. But I do agree.
Can you give it to
Colts,
me for real?
Adetomiwa Adebaware.
I don't know. It sounds like what I said. Anyway.
I respect it. But no, the Colts had a really wonderful draft. I'm writing up this piece over at PFN about like late round rookies that could shine both on offense and defense. And it's like the Colts populate like a good chunk of the list on both sides of the ball, in part because I'm cheating and I'm using the consensus board. But like both Jalen Jones and Darius Rush were great picks. Adebaware was a great pick. And who knows, right? Because, steals are steals for a reason. They don't tend to work out as often as we think, but I don't have to care about that. It's May. So, from the outside looking in, I think the Colts had a really wonderful draft and the Vikings had a lot of opportunities to grab those guys specifically. And hey, if they grabbed because Darius Rush didn't go until the 4th or 5th round. If they had grabbed Darius Rush at the bottom of the 3rd, we all have been happy with that.
I can't even emphasize enough like how many players the Colts took that we mentioned on this show and with like fondness, like Jalen, even down to Jalen Jones. I'm pretty sure we profiled the 7th round and we're like, this guy sounds really good. This could be a steal. Incredible. And Evan Hall, the local connection. I literally called his high school games. Maple Grove came back from like 18 down with 2 minutes left to win a playoff game, and Evan Hall scored the winning touchdown. And now he's like playing for the Colts. That's crazy.
I want to say,
if you score for Maple Grove, we know, you'll turn into a great NFL player.
Correct. That's the conclusion.
I want to say with Blackman, the fact that like we didn't know about him isn't necessarily a knock on him, is more of a knock on us. Like,
yep, you're right.
That's a me problem.
I know exactly what I need to know at all times.
Okay. But after going back and actually like watching him, I will say, as critical as I was of Keely Ringo, probably would have preferred Keely Ringo by that point in the draft. And I think there's a couple other people that I would have preferred. I don't know. I would be wrong, but I wanted out there on record that, like, as much of a hater as I was, by 102, it's different.
But it is funny to be like, yeah, I was a huge critic because I didn't know much about him. Then I went back and watched him, and yeah, they should have picked the other guy.
Yes, that is precisely my take. I watched him and I went, ooh, oh no.
We are creating bulletin board material for Blackman.
Please.
Yeah, so if he succeeds, it's because of us.
Yeah. Exactly. We're fueling the fire of doubted Vikings.
If Vikings players engage with my critical takes, that's a win. We love that.
Braun, what is your best story of someone, player or adjacent, like family member, coach, trying to dunk on you for a take? Do you have any of those?
Trying to dunk on me for a take.
In KJ Osborne fashion.
In KJ Osborne fashion. I don't know about like dunking on my takes, because I'm usually a lot more lukewarm about them. I managed to dodge Chandon Sullivan's name searching. He found a couple of nice tweets.
Oh, he found Arif.
That's right. Yeah. That was
fun. He found a couple of tweets of mine, but they were like plays he made in camp.
So let's I won that one.
I got there. I think it was a player's dad DM'd me once really angrily, but didn't do it publicly.
Slaughter?
And I
I
don't
was about
remember.
to say, was it Daryl?
Oh yeah, the Sloat thing, the Kyle Sloter stuff. He would chime in sometimes and like correct me on stuff that I would say about like trying to break down like a quarterback play, like a Kirk Cousins play or something like that, which was actually really helpful.
This is Kyle or
like,
Daryl?
Oh, yeah. No, Kyle.
Daryl?
Yeah.
Oh, Kyle.
He would just like pop in, I mean, the Breakers aren't in season, so.
My best example still remains Adam Pac-Man Jones responding to my Adam Thielen story, looking back on joint practices with the Bengals when they basically ignored
2014,
Thielen.
Right?
And
so this
said,
is before Thielen went off.
This is, and it might have been a year or two later than that, but he still was not, he still had not done anything in the league.
Yeah.
And they said, we want to go against some dogs. And there were fights in that camp, and it was crazy. So I wrote the story. I did not name Adam Jones, Pac-Man Jones, in the tweet. So he would have had to search Adam Thielen's name to find it. Talk about living rent-free.
Your story went around. I'm sure somebody shared it with him. I bet he wasn't name searching Adam Thielen. Someone was like, "Hey man, did you do this?"
Yeah. And the dunking was all on Pac-Man. 100%.
Oh yeah, he should never have responded. What an L.
Yeah, and then the Vikings just torched the Bengals that week.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely destroyed them. I can't remember if he was actively on the team at the time, or if he was like, I think he was gone.
Might he have been? One of the corners that disrespected Adam Thielen was on the team at the time. That's for sure. Maybe Pac-Man was on the team at the time, but yeah, I remember that story because it blew up back in I still want to say it was 2014, Mike Zimmer's first year. They did joint practices with the Bengals, right? And so, which, like, if it was in 2015, that would work too, because Adam Thielen didn't become, Adam Thielen until 2015, until that season had actually started. So either of those years would make sense, and I'm sure we could look it up. But I remember that story blowing up at the time, where like the cornerbacks just literally just get up out of line when Adam Thielen's turn is up, and it's like, man, come on, that's ridiculous. We didn't see any of that with like the joint practices with the Jaguars or the Broncos, the 49ers. All wholesome, respectful fighting.
100%. And I think Thielen's instigating the fights now, actually.
Now, he's been instigating fights for years now.
Yeah. Thielen.
He's an instigator.
Thielen's not messing around out there. Look out, Carolina.
There was one reason I was like, everyone's connecting Adam Thielen to the Patriots for, the obvious reason, slot receiver. But
that reason.
Yeah, that reason. But it's like, I mean, not that this is predictive of anything, but Thielen fought with Bill Belichick a couple of times, like
on the sideline.
They were not like
in
buddies.
Games. That is so funny. NFL Draft Buzz newsletter, authored by Luke Inman. He's not on the show today. He's off, but you can still get the post-draft reaction NFL Draft Buzz newsletter straight to your inbox, lockedonpodcast.com/newsletters. Yesterday at the Vikings facility, Andrew Booth Jr. spoke. Akayleb Evans spoke about their respective recoveries. In a nutshell, Andrew Booth Jr., he's taking it easy. He doesn't want to commit to any timeline. He's just being patient. He'll get back on the field as soon as possible. Akayleb Evans, he says that he has been cleared. He was cleared, around the end of last year. And he said that it might have been 3 concussions. It might have been 2, because one of them, he went in the protocol, but turned out that he was all right. But had a very reflective offseason. Talked about taking a vacation from social media, spending more time with his family, thinking about what it means to lead, how he wants to play the game safer. Bottom line, you've got 2 cornerbacks coming off injuries, different types of injuries. Andrew Booth and Akayleb Evans. Let's assume they're health guys. Let's assume they stay healthy. Which one do you think has the inside track to be a starter on this team? Braun.
Guy had the job last year, right? Who's ahead on the depth chart last year? That's Evans. I would say that's the inside track, and the onus is on Andrew Booth to beat him, to earn it back. Will he do that? Yeah, I don't know. That all comes down to camp. But I would say if we're talking like pole position, then I think Evans has the starting position on Booth if it comes down to those 2. But it might be both of them, honestly.
Yeah. Now, can we recall off the top of our heads exactly how the timeline worked here? Because was Evans thrust into duty after Booth had first been hurt? Did he get that opportunity because there was nobody else?
Listed on the week 1 depth chart above. He started camp above the whole time. Like, it was very clear that he was above.
Yes and no. Maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, but yeah, Evans was listed ahead of him on the depth chart. At the time, it felt like a motivation ploy in camp. But when it came to snaps on the field before Booth's first of many injuries, I believe Booth saw the field before Evans. And so he was earlier in the regular season rotation. And then Booth got injured, Evans plays, and then both are healthy, and Evans plays instead of Booth, which puts Booth back behind him on the depth chart. Again, this is all just recollection. Evans gets hurt, Booth plays, Booth gets hurt, they're both out, and now we're at Benny Sapp. I don't know who we're at that point. but
Duke Shelley,
right. It's hard to remember because Duke Shelley clearly should have been starting the whole time.
The Duke. And also Cameron Dantzler existed sometimes.
Oh yeah, Cameron Dantzler. That's who it is.
All right, fact check Sammy coming in here. So Akayleb Evans actually saw the field in week 1, like mop-up duty, end of Packers game. Evans played in the first game. I don't know if Booth was healthy. He did not. No, so Booth. No, this is what happened, guys.
Oh, because he was hurt in the preseason.
Special team snaps. He got hurt on the second play on special teams in the Packer game, and then didn't play again until the Miami game. So that explains that. So that's why. So Evans was kind of thrown in. Booth was already hurt in the game. Evans got the snaps at the end. Fast forward, though, Booth gets healthy. Evans is healthy. Evans plays against Washington. 45 snaps in week 8. Yeah. He gets hurt against Buffalo, I think. He plays some at Buffalo. Booth plays some at Buffalo. And that was where, did they both get hurt? Because that's where Duke Shelley emerged, was Buffalo had the pass breakup in overtime.
Right. That's right. That was one of, it turns out, many Duke Shelley games.
Booth played a bunch.
Duke Shelley game.
Yeah, Booth played a bunch of the Dallas game, but apparently played most of that game hurt, according to his presser. I didn't realize
Correct.
he was
68
hurt for
snaps in that game.
In
and
an
Evans did not.
astonishing web we weave going down the rabbit hole of Andrew Booth injuries. But I would say I guess I disagree with Luke here. I think that, shocker, I think that Andrew Booth probably has the inside track to the job. I wouldn't use the way that first season played out as much of a template. And I think that the Vikings had always kind of anticipated that year 2 would be, when we'd get to see a lot of Booth, because Cameron Dancher was supposed to be starting out as a Patrick Peterson. And obviously we'll see how it kind of plays out in the OTA rotation. But my assumption is that, Booth not only has like the pick investment, but has like the upside that they like, just in terms of, overall athleticism. Brian Flores is obviously he's a new defensive coordinator, so he gets to, start everybody at square one. But I think that Booth probably has the inside track, just because of overall kind of what his profile is versus Evans.
I think that Booth's track is, and you're just 1 second, Braun. I think Booth's track is maybe a little clearer than some assume, because I think the assumption is that Evans had a great rookie year and that it was derailed by head injuries.
The assumption?
I think that some people have that assumption, and I think it's just a little bit premature. Evans had 162 snaps and Booth had 105. So it was not a substantial number more that Evans played than Booth. And in fact, PFF coverage grade, which is not gospel, but Booth actually had a better grade than Evans.
Yeah. And the thing is, I really liked how Evans played a lot. But to me, it was always in the context of a 4th-round rookie who did not get first-team snaps in camp. Like, I thought that given the circumstances, he played very well. Now, on an all given the circumstances team, Duke Shelley clears, right? But I think that given the circumstances, Akayleb Evans was very impressive. But to me, there was clearly a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of his level of play when he played, which I didn't want to dog him too much for because of those circumstances. And maybe I should have, because I think that we're coming away with an impression of his level of play that isn't really true to reality. Again, I don't want to dog him too much, but there was like a lot left there for him to improve upon that, wasn't always available. Whereas Andrew Booth, it's hard to like remember 100 snaps, especially if 50 of them are injured, 68, I guess, of them are injured. But I don't recall being disappointed with what I saw, which I think if both come away with better than I thought, I'm going to probably go with the 2nd-round pick.
It's interesting with these two, because I think the reason that they put Evans in over Booth at times when both were healthy was kind of a readiness thing. Akayleb Evans's play was a little more conservative. He would back off, give a lot of cushion, things would get caught in front of him, but that's okay because you're not giving up the big play kind of thing. And Andrew Booth was very like, no seatbelts, we die like men, no cushion, just, turn and run with the guy. If you get beat, you get beat, and it's a big long thing. That's what happened a lot in the Cowboys game, which, especially if he was injured playing that way, that all kind of tracks. But I think as like on the long term of a development arc, if you're playing that more aggressive style, less cushion, pushing things a little bit further before you turn your hips and bail, that can become a much better cornerback if you get a better sense for exactly how to time things out and when receivers are coming at you and stuff. Like the potential there is a lot higher. So I could certainly see it. I guess my question becomes, day one of camp, like, who do the Vikings put up? And then you have them shake it all out and, you go off of camp evaluations from there. But like day one of camp, do they do that, or do they continue to say, okay, Andrew Booth, you're behind Akayleb Evans and you have to overcome him? Maybe he does that in the first week, but you got to do it just for the formality, if nothing else.
And the slate is probably super clean, right? Like, there may not be any judgment either way. Like, Flores coming in, changing everything up.
Yeah,
I could see them rotating easily. I could see it being one big carousel of Blackman, Booth, because I think Blackman is in the mix. Like, I don't think Booth and Evans have absolutely distance themselves to the point where they can't throw a rookie in the mix too. Like, I think it is truly like a 4-man competition to try to win those spots.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think Blackman has an immediate opportunity to win that job. I would just say that it seems as if Blackman's profile coming out requires a little bit of technical seasoning. And so I would probably place him a little bit behind both of them, but they do both have, or all three of them, but they do all have to learn a new defense, right? They do have to learn the scheme-specific techniques that they need to learn. And so it is a little bit murkier in terms of projection about who's going to win what job. But I am just going to kind of default to, hey, you've got a second-round second-year player, a fourth-round second-year player, and a third-round first-year player. Probably that second-year second-round player is going to win the job. But I think that you're right that there is a lot of murkiness there, a lot of opportunity, I think, for somebody like Blackman to win the job outright. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with the assumption that Booth has like Luke said, the pole position on the job, but also that this is probably going to be fairly well competed.
Very wide open room.
Yeah,
for sure.
We're going to use the word murky a lot. We touched on my guy, Andre Carter II, on Monday. Did you guys see the contract they gave him?
$300,000, right? The
$340K.
40K signing bonus, something like that.
Yep. And this is virtually the only edge that they added in the entire draft or UDFA process. They didn't draft one, and they only signed Carter. Which I don't know if that's a clue that they're pretty confident about za'darius, confident about Daniil. That to me seems murky as well. But I do think they need to have
someone
guys...
from France. They did the international program. Got yeah, I don't know anything about him.
Roster exemption. Yeah, let's break down the French all-22. I have a good international football story. I don't know if we have time to tell it right now, though. I'll save it for a rainy day. So let's end the show with this.
Start the clock. It's time to execute the 4-minute drill.
I've now planted the name Andre Carter into your mind, and with that in mind, give me a sleeper to make the Vikings 53-man roster. It can be anybody. Arif.
So a sleeper would probably not include 4th or 5th round picks, right? So let me do this really quickly. I'm going to go with a 7th round pick. I'm going to go with DeWayne McBride. I talked him up on the show a bunch last week. I think that if Dalvin Cook is a post-June 1st cut, I think that that's entirely in the cards, and that leaves you room to have 4 running backs on the roster. That includes Debo. His contact balance. Yeah, that's his nickname, DeWayne McBride, Debo.
Okay.
So his capability as a goal line back, as a power back, I think is not replicated very well on the roster. I know that we've seen Alexander Mattison as that guy, and he is closer to that guy than anyone else on the roster prior to having McBride, but he is not really a power back in the same sense. So I think that Debo fills that role pretty well in a way that Mattison doesn't. Mattison is more of a 3-down back that does not have breakaway speed. And I think that having a committee that includes McBride, I think helps a lot. And I think the Vikings might even be on the verge or on the cusp of making a tough decision between Nwangwu and Chandler. The Vikings brought in a lot of potential returners, and so they are not going to be tied to Nwangwu. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for McBride. I think that he is just a wonderful player, just in terms of being able to watch him. And I just saw a statistic tweeted out about how he's like number 1 in the FBS on non-perfectly blocked plays, and number 2 in the FBS on perfectly blocked plays. That's cool. I'm going to take that with me. I don't know if it projects to anything, but let's pretend it does.
Braun.
I'm going way deeper than that. I'm going with an undrafted free agent, and I'm not going to do the Ivan Pace thing. All right, that's too easy. I'm going Najee Thompson. The cornerback room, that back end of it is a little bit more open still. You have Byron Murphy. Yeah, murky.
Najee Thompson, that guy?
Yeah.
What?
Akayleb Evans,
That is the
Andrew Booth.
90th player on the roster.
Yep.
What?
You asked for
Yes.
a sleeper, Sam.
That
This
is
guy-
the
asked for a
hottest
sleeper.
take I've ever
This
heard.
guy's sleeping so deep he might be in a coma.
Yeah, let me lay this out. All right. So you have Akayleb Evans, Booth, Murphy, Mekhi Blackman, Jay Ward. Those 5 probably locks, right? That's 5 corners.
Out of the
Jawan
three
Williams?
out of the 3 UDFA corners, I gotta know why it's this one.
Have you
Because,
seen his
A,
testing and his profile?
Because I talked to him. Listen to Locked On Vikings podcast next week. And because he takes special teams so much more seriously. When you're going to be CB6, CB7, you have to make it on special teams. And special teams is a pride of his. He's new to cornerback. He played wide receiver a bunch in college. It's like barely a thing, but he takes it so seriously, blocking kicks, playing special teams on multiple units, and being that kind of guy that makes the team in that way. So that is my deep sleeper for the 53-man roster. And it's not like there's anybody, after those first 5, it's not like there's anybody in that room that you're like, God, but we have to cut Jawan Williams. That's doable, I think, for a guy that can be an asset everywhere on special teams. This is not a guy that's going to make it from scrimmage. CB6 never makes it from scrimmage. Chris Boyd never made it from scrimmage. He made it because he was good at special teams. That's going to be where it's at. And Najee Thompson, he is so giddy about special teams. You got to listen to the interview. It's going to go up next week.
That's cool that you got him.
His short shuttle was the exact same time as his 40.
His testing, his math bomb, RAS, composite speed grade, poor. Composite agility grade, very poor.
Run a
Composite
7.43
explosion grade, very poor. His height is in the poor area. His weight is fine, and his bench was medium.
He's built like a running back.
I mean,
whatever.
it's a great hot take. I'm just blown away that and it sounds like you have some backing for it. And if Dan Chisena can make a football team just for special teams,
there's always somebody. Marcus Sherrills had a 10-year career.
Hey,
got in from scrimmage like twice.
I have covered a lot of players that have been excited about special teams, and it turns out they were not good at special teams.
He doesn't exactly have a trait physically that like Chisena, where you say, okay, he's not technically sound, but he sure is fast, or he sure is strong.
I mean, this guy profiles more as like the up returner on kickoff returns than he does the punt gunner. It's a different class of special teams.
Also,
sure,
and up in class.
I'm going to say
Georgia Southern.
He's not in this building as a corner or as a wide receiver. He's in this building as a possible special team. That is what gets him in an NFL look at all. Yeah. So yeah, projecting him from scrimmage at all, it's like I think the Vikings already kind of know what they're looking at here, and it's just a matter of getting it. I mean, look, man, I could have picked a draft pick too, but I decided to make it a real sleeper.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm respecting you, I guess, for going out on that limb, because I certainly would not. Tristan Jackson. This is going to be the guy that I think makes that second year leap. Someone that no one's thinking about. And I love Malik Knowles. I like Jalen Naylor. No one's talking about Tristan Jackson. He's a little on the taller side. He's hung around.
Last year.
I just have a feeling.
He had a fun camp last year.
Yeah.
A lot of highs, a lot of lows. He was very noticeable in camp. I will say that.
Yeah, I remember he had a real shot going into the last preseason game, and then if I remember, he had a bad preseason game, and that was about it. But he could have balled out and actually Chad BB'd this.
Yeah, one of those guys that's always getting the ball because he's open, but you're not really confident he's going to catch it.
Blake Prohl, too. He, I think, injuries might just have been too much
for
him.
Is he going to make it this year? And I don't mean on the team. I just mean through camp.
I just remember pre his first injury, he was looking really good. Hottest take of the day goes to Luke Braun. That was insane. It's like the end of Hot Ones, where they have the hottest sauce and they're like,
Luke did the dab, right?
Hiccuping. Yeah, the last dab. That was crazy. What a mic drop. Arif Hasan, Luke Braun, the Minnesota Football Party. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Comment below your sleeper to make the Vikings 53-man roster. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts as well. Roundtable tomorrow with Ron Johnson, Reggie Wilson, and Luke Inman. Until then, saying so long on Locked On Sports Minnesota.